Before the sun broke over Lagos, before the streets filled with noise and the city found its rhythm, Ada was already on her way. Her feet slapped against the pavement with an urgency that spoke of a life not fully lived. The air smelled of rain and unspoken dreams. And in every breath, she carried the weight of a world that didn't know she existed. Ada, a young woman in her early 20s, had long ago learned how to move quietly through the world. A maid in a mansion she had worked in for 5 years, her existence was invisible to those who paid her. She had nothing more than what was given to her, a life defined by someone else's rules, someone else's choices. Today, though, something was different. The world she had lived in was about to be shattered. For years, she had served the Ekpor family, wealthy and powerful, each task another reminder that she was nothing more than an extension of their lives. But Ada had dreams of a future different from the one she had inherited. Yet, she could never shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that the woman she was meant to be had been lost in the shadows. As Ada walked to the mansion that had been her prison, the air seemed heavier than usual. She didn't know it yet, but this day would mark the end of her silence. Before now, Ada's life had not always been this way. There was a time when the roof above her head was more of a suggestion than a protection. Her mother, Ngozi, worked tirelessly to make sure they had enough food to survive, even if it meant going without herself. In the slums of Lagos, they scraped by with whatever they could find. Ada remembered the torn school uniform, the worn-out shoes, and the meals that were never enough. Yet, it wasn't the material poverty that hurt the most. It was the absence of her father, the crushing weight of growing up without his presence. Ngozi, her mother, never spoke of him. Instead, she worked, and worked some more, making sure Ada didn't feel the ache of abandonment. One day, things will be better, Ngozi would tell her, squeezing her hand tight. We will rise above this. We'll find our way out. But it wasn't until Ada turned 16 that her life changed. Mrs. Ekpor, a woman from the upper echelons of society, approached Ngozi with a proposition. Ada would leave her mother and go work as a maid for the Ekpors. The money would be more than enough to secure her mother's future. A house, food, stability. It was a sacrifice Ada had to make. And so, she left, knowing that her family would be better off, even if her heart stayed behind. It was in the quiet of the Ekpor family church, under the cracked cross that had seen generations of Lagos elite, that Ada first noticed Michael Ekpor. He was standing at the pulpit, delivering a sermon that seemed to touch everyone's soul. His voice was soft but firm, filled with a passion that Ada couldn't ignore. She had seen Michael before, but never like this. Standing tall, with an aura of confidence and conviction, he was different. And for the first time in years, Ada felt seen. Not as a maid, not as a shadow, but as a woman, fully present. She looked down at her hands, rough and worn from years of scrubbing floors, and wondered for the first time in ages, could I belong somewhere else? When the service ended, Michael's eyes met hers. It was brief, almost unnoticed by the others, but to Ada, it felt like everything had changed. For that one fleeting moment, someone had looked at her and actually seen her. Over the next few weeks, their brief exchanges in the church became something more. Michael began to seek Ada out, their conversations slipping from casual pleasantries to something deeper. He was different from the others in his family. He didn't see her as a servant. He saw her as someone to talk to, someone to confide in. But there were whispers. Mrs. Ekpor, noticing the subtle changes in her son, pulled Ada aside one afternoon, her voice low but stern. "Be careful, my child," Mrs. Ekpor said, her gaze icy. "You may work in this house, but you will never be one of us. People like you don't belong with people like us. Understand?" Ada nodded, the weight of Mrs. Ekpor's words sinking deep into her chest. She didn't know what she had hoped for, that Michael could somehow escape the same class restrictions that bound everyone else? That a love so pure could blossom amidst the invisible chains that held her down? But the love Ada felt for Michael was complicated. She was falling for him, but every glance, every word was a reminder of the world that would never accept her as she was. Ada's world crashed down on her one afternoon when she overheard a conversation that shattered everything she had hoped for. She had been cleaning the kitchen when she heard Michael's voice, raised in. frustration. He was speaking to his mother, unaware that Ada was listening from the next room. "She's just a maid, Mother." Michael's voice cracked with emotion. "She's beneath us. I can't marry her. You don't understand what she is." Ada's heart shattered. It wasn't just the words, it was the realization that Michael had never truly seen her, not as an equal, not as someone he could ever love without guilt. In that moment, all the warmth she had felt from their exchanges turned to ashes. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Michael had never seen her as she had seen him. The love she had given him was a fragile thing, broken before it could truly blossom. Ada stood alone in the darkness of her room that night, her mind whirling. She was not one to break under pressure. No, she would rise above this. She had always been strong, even when life told her she wasn't. Ada took a step back from the pain, allowing it to fuel her resolve. She hired a lawyer, using the small savings she had accumulated over the years. She requested a DNA test. The truth that lay hidden for so long began to unravel. Ada discovered, through a shocking turn of events, that she was not just a servant girl. She was the daughter of a wealthy Nigerian businessman, and the blood of that legacy ran through her veins. Her life had never been what it seemed. Her entire existence had been a lie. But now, Ada could make her own choices, rewrite her own destiny. The courtroom was packed with tension. The Ekbers sat at one table, their expressions unreadable. Ada, dressed in her simple attire but with an air of quiet power, stood at the opposite table. Her lawyer presented the DNA results, and the truth was undeniable. Ada was the legitimate heir to an empire she had never known existed. The Ekbers, who had once looked down on her, were now exposed for their lies and deceit. The moral weight of their arrogance crushed them as the evidence piled against them. Michael sat, stunned, watching the truth unfold in front of him. The woman he had once dismissed as beneath him was not just his equal. She was someone of great power and legacy. The Ekpor family's empire, built on deceit and class privilege, was crumbling before his eyes. Ada didn't need to say a word. Her victory was in her presence, in the quiet way she commanded respect. She had won not through anger, but through the simple act of reclaiming what was always hers. In the aftermath, Michael came to Ada, his expression filled with regret and sorrow. He apologized, but Ada saw through his words. He had failed to see her worth when it mattered. She no longer needed him to validate her. Her new life, her new world, was hers to shape. Ada found love not in the form of the man who had once failed her, but in the quiet understanding of a man who saw her for who she truly was, a woman of power, dignity, and resilience. As she sat with him in a humble cafe, talking about the future, Ada realized that true love wasn't about status or wealth. It was about being seen, truly seen, for who you were. Later, sitting on the porch of her small home, Ada watched the sun set over Lagos. The city that had once been a battleground for her survival was now a place of peace. Her mother sat beside her, and for the first time in years, Ada felt the weight of her struggles lift. She had reclaimed herself, rebuilt her life. She wasn't just a maid anymore, she was a woman of substance, of legacy. The future was no longer a distant dream. It was real. And for the first time, Ada could breathe easy, knowing that she had triumphed, not through wealth or status, but through her own strength and resilience. "Life doesn't need to be perfect," Ada whispered, looking at her mother. "But it's mine now." The camera pulled back slowly, the fading sun casting long shadows over the porch. Ada, no longer a servant, no longer a shadow, but a woman who had found her place in the world.